Hey there, podcast enthusiasts. Welcome back to Soul Podcasting. And I'm your host, Demetria. And today we're taking a deep dive into the art of creating an awesome podcast content strategy. So we're just barely going to scratch the surface, but I think that what we're going to talk about today will give you a heads up or a launching pad from which you can begin your strategy to create your content. So if you're a content creator looking to amplify your impact in this world of podcasting, I believe you're in the right place. So if you want, grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and let's get started. My first tip for you is to define your purpose and define your audience. This is first things first. You have to know why you're hitting that record button and understand what your podcast is all about, what you're trying to do. What are you trying to accomplish with your show? Is it to entertain, to educate, inspire, or maybe you have a mix of all three of these things? So understanding your purpose is going to guide you in your content creation. And then the very next thing is to identify your target audience. Who do you want to speak to? Who are you trying to deliver your message to? And what are their interests and their pain points? How can you tailor your content to that specific audience to ensure that it resonates and it adds value? To that, I want to offer my Launch Confidently podcasting checklist. It's absolutely free. You can check it out at impactpodcastcoach.com and download your checklist. It's going to help you to discover your purpose and to figure out all the things you need in starting your podcast and even keeping your podcast going for some time. So I always recommend my checklist just because it will help you to kind of feel like you have a head start and you know exactly what you need to be focusing on as you build out your show. My second tip for you is to plan your episodes strategically. So you want to have some strategy that you're using to help you plan out what you want to be talking about. So your podcast episodes need to maintain a flow that keeps your audience hooked on what you're talking about. So you need to plan your episodes strategically. So you'll want to consider having something like an editorial calendar. And this doesn't have to look exactly like anybody else's calendar. You could be using a number of all the myriad of different platforms that are available out there, but find yourself a way, a method by which you can maintain your calendar, map out your topics. What do you want to talk about over the course of the next 6 months, the next year, and then ensure that you have a good balance of different content types. Mix it up with interviews if you choose to interview people on your show, or some solo episodes. Maybe have some audience interaction if that's what you wish. As you've noticed on this podcast, I don't have any interviews so far. I'm not doing a lot of or any audience interaction aside from the responses that I get on feedback, maybe a review or something in Apple Podcasts. But I am mainly a solo show on this podcast. So if that's the way you feel most comfortable, then figure out how you want to interact with your audience and what you want your show to look like. And if you can add some variety, variety is the spice of life, then do that. Variety keeps things fresh and exciting for your listeners. Some of my other shows, I do add interviews and I try to have some type of interaction like contests or giveaways, things that make it exciting, but haven't really felt like I needed to on this show. This is mainly for me. I'm thinking that for this show in particular, I feel like what I want to do is mainly educate. So I'm not entertaining. I'm hopefully educating a lot, and hopefully there's some inspiration there as well to get you started on creating your own show. So that's my main focus on this podcast. And you have to figure out what your purpose is for the podcast that you create. My next tip for you is to craft consistent and compelling themes. Again, you have to know who your audience is and what you're wanting to accomplish on your show. And because of that, and your episodes that you're going to be planning out will have the topics that you want to cover over the next couple of months mapped out in your editorial calendar. So in doing so, you'll be creating these compelling themes and having a consistency in that. You want to choose themes that align with your podcast purpose and appeal to your audience. So whether it's weekly interviews that you're doing or your storytelling or deep diving into specific topics, you want to make sure that your themes are engaging and that they hold your listeners' interest. Remember that consistency not only helps to retain your audience that you currently have, but it also attracts new listeners who might resonate with the themes that you've chosen. So think about the themes. These are the topics, what you'll be discussing on your show. Think about how you want to build that out over the course of the year. Maybe there's certain seasons where you'll talk about holiday ideas. You'll have a holiday theme. Maybe certain seasons you'll talk about restfulness, or maybe summer break and vacationing, or mindfulness at certain times of the year. Think about what your topics are going to be and how it relates to the crux of your show and the main overarching idea of your show, and how those themes can interact with what you're doing with your audience. So making sure it's kind of all integrated so it makes sense is important. And then just maintain a sense of consistency. So that can either mean weekly, monthly, every other month. The timing is really up to you. You don't have to put out a show every single week or every other week. So just figure out how consistency is for you, what that means for you and your lifestyle, and make that work for you. So there are going to be times that life gets in the way and maybe you can't post for a couple of weeks or a month or two, and your audience will very likely still be there and still be subscribed to you. So I don't recommend that you give up on your podcast or on your show just because you haven't been able to post in a little while. I recommend that you give yourself those breaks that you need and then come back to the show when you're ready. But just remember, those breaks are something that you can actually factor into the overall production of the show over the course of the year, so that you don't have to constantly put out episodes every single week and get burned out. You can factor in time to rest and to pull back and give yourself a break. And so that's what a lot of shows are starting to do now, as I've noticed. And I shouldn't say a lot of shows. I actually haven't seen it a lot, but I have seen a few that are doing this and practicing this kind of sabbatical, or Sabbath, I should say, of stepping back from your podcasting or from any other online endeavor that you might be doing, your blogging or your websites, your social media, stepping back for a season, allowing yourself time to recalibrate and just kind of process where you've been and where you'd like to go, and then going from there. Because if you are on that hamster wheel and you never have a chance to take a break and stop for just a minute, just to breathe, you will inevitably burn out. And it doesn't matter what that project is, whether it's a podcast or whether it is the work that you're involved in life, whatever that work happens to be. If you don't take breaks, you'll burn out. So just keep that in mind as you're working on your podcasting projects. My next tip for you is to leverage the social media that you have and engage with your community. Now, again, you don't have to use social media. If you're not a fan of Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all the things, then just try connecting with your community via your email newsletter if you have that. Hopefully you do have something like that set up in advance. I get personally burned out with social media, and I have to step back and take breaks from it because it is not something that I really enjoy doing. I enjoy the content creation aspect of what I do. I love creating content, getting it out there for my audience to listen to or to read on a blog. And most recently, very much enjoy the audio and the video aspect of content creating. So that's my YouTube channel, and those are my podcasts. That's where I like to spend my energy, is to creating that content. I don't so much enjoy the marketing aspect of it via social media. So I love marketing in other ways. And for me, that's relationship marketing, where I'm building that community and relationship through my newsletters. I feel like I have more of a personal connection with those who are reading my newsletters. But when I just throw things out there on Instagram or Facebook, it's kind of hit or miss, and I don't really have that community that I'm building there. So I do get burned out with it. But if this is something that you have a real knack for, using your Facebook or your Instagram, and you have quite a following there that really interacts with you, then that's where you need to build community. So when you build a community around your podcast, this is going to be crucial for the growth of your show. So use your platforms to your advantage, your social media, to promote your episodes, and maybe even to share some behind the scenes moments, and really engage with your audience. Encourage your listeners to share their thoughts and their feedback. I do this, of course, through my newsletters, but if you like your Instagram or your Twitter or whatever you're using, TikTok, then share with your audience and encourage your listeners to collab with you. And then you can respond to your comments and messages and show your audience that you're not just a voice in their ears, but you're a real person who cares about what they have to say. My next tip is to analyze and optimize. So this is where it's my last tip, but this is where you don't want to kind of leave everything hanging at the content creation part of what you're doing. You do have to take time to analyze what's happening and then optimize it to make it better. Your podcast performance is crucial to how well your show's being perceived. So you need to know your numbers. So dive into your analytics, and this is going to help you understand what works and what doesn't work. Take note of popular episodes, the ones that everyone seems to be downloading a lot of. Look at your listener demographics. Where are your listeners listening from? And how long are they listening for? Look at all of these engagement metrics and use this data to optimize your future content strategy. Okay. And then just stay adaptable, because the podcasting landscape is constantly evolving, and so should your approach. Even though your podcast is a serious endeavor, I just want to encourage you, please don't take yourself too seriously out here. There's a lot of the movement of podcasting that is trial and error. And the sooner we realize just how much of what we're doing is something that we have to figure out as we go, the better and easier it will be for us to just jump in and do the work. This really is something that we can't hold on too tightly to and hope and pray and wish that everything goes according to plan, because podcasting is not something that you can control necessarily, especially if you are a one-man or one-woman show out here doing the best you can with the resources and tools you have available to you. Maybe as an entrepreneur, solopreneur, someone who is doing business on your own. If you're a one woman or one man show doing this all on your own, it can feel like an overwhelming project if you take yourself too seriously. And it can feel like a really fun hobby if you loosen the grip just a bit. So enjoy the journey of podcasting. And there you have it, my fellow podcasters and friends. This is a roadmap to creating and crafting an effective content strategy. And remember, it's not just about recording your show and uploading your show. It's about creating an experience for your audience. So go ahead and unleash your creativity, connect with your listeners, and watch your podcast flourish. And that's it for today on Soul Podcasting. I'm Demetria signing off. And until next time, happy podcasting.